Go.
So first of all, I will be wearing something a lot better.
Nice.
But to assist the landowner, aka Mr. Shipman, with changes to his land and growing, he can use the methods of no-till farming, or in some cases, a low-till farming method. Like strip tilling to make the land have more life and make it so in agricultural regions it can reduce or eliminate soil erosion. No-till is an agricultural technique which increases the amount of water that infiltrates into the soil and increases organic matter retention and cycling of nutrients in the soil. A way of using no-till farming is to disc harrow the land instead of plowing it or just not touching it at all. Another way he can change his cropping operation is to have a crop rotation. In crop rotation, the grower manages the soil, organic matter, and nutrition availability by incorporating different crop residues. Cycling among crops with different nutrient needs, using cover crops and adding organic soil amendments. Most crops deplete soil nutrition during their growth cycle. Some of these nutritions leave the farm as harvested products, and the rest return to the soil as crop residues. The nutritions and residues may or may not be available to the next crops, so crop roots and residues improve the soil fertility by stimulating soil microbial communities and improving soil aggregation. This improved soil physical environment facilitates water infiltration, water holding, aeration, and ultimately root growth and plant nutrition foraging.
So I'll be assisting the landowner in what BMPs he'll be using and how they will benefit his land. So BMPs are best management practices that are designed to protect water quality from adverse effects from land management practices from all watershed locations. On determining where and what BMPs goes where is hard to say, considering that the pollution from nutrients and pesticides can leave a field with no evidence. So the first BMP that I have considered was continuous no-till, also known as conservation tillage, reduces erosion and runoff by minimizing soil disturbance. The practice also builds the soil's health and its ability to hold moisture. Traditional plowing can be harmful in ways of which it can lead to erosion, runoff, and could go into the watershed. And the second BMP that I considered was cover crops can help the soil. It will reduce runoff, erosions, and can help enrich the soil with organic matter. And the last I picked was nutrient management plans. So helping farmer determine how much fertilizer to use, where to use it. By using the nutrient management plan, it can help farmers cut the cost of the fertilizer, and it can cut the amount of nutrients runoff into the watershed.
Okay, so now we have Jack Weber. Jack Weber is a farmer in southwest Minnesota who has a blog about different farming practices. In one blog, he talks specifically about no-till farming, about how no-till farming has been beneficial for him and many other farmers. He mentions the saying, "You can't switch to no-till until dad is in the ground." This saying implies unwillingness to switch tillage practices among the older generation of farmers. Those farmers see no reason to change tillage practices because their way is working for them. Weber then explains why farmers should change to no-till farming. His main argument was money. He had a particularly dry year in 2011, and when he pulled the ripper through corn stalks, he stated that it felt like ripping through concrete. This took a huge toll on his equipment. He ended up spending over $1,500 alone replacing ripper points and additional money on fuel consumption and other repairs. Another argument he wrote about was the constant need to pick rocks. Weber farms on hilly land similar to Mr. Shipman's. Hilly land tends to produce a significant amount of rock, and when he practiced tilling, it only made that worse. He decided to practice no-till on one of his fields and found that his yield was similar to the year before. He had less rock to pick, and he saved money on input costs.
Stream buffers are important for maintaining water quality. They're needed everywhere, but especially in and around farmland. Farmers like Mr. Shipman don't always realize the damage that they are causing by using their fertilizers and pesticides. Maintaining a healthy watershed is good for both humans and animals alike. Humans benefit by being able to use the water for recreation, fishing, and leisure. Animals benefit by being able to live in and drink the water safely. The current buffer plan is an excellent solution to helping our client contribute to benefiting the water quality and bettering his farming practices. By leaving contour buffers in place every fall, he will be improving the water quality, which in turn improves his groundwater quality. Better groundwater means healthier soil and a higher profitability in his crop yield. So although it seems like Mr. Shipman will be harvesting less every year, it won't actually turn out that way. Every time his soil and water quality, over time his soil and water quality will improve, balancing out, if not overpassing, his current crop yield. Thinking back to Mr. Weber's blog from earlier, he talks about how his crop production changed. He states that his yield was comparable to the previous year and that they had avoided 2 tillage passes. This significantly reduced the input cost. By 2013, all of his ground was no-tilled, and the first major advantage he saw came in the spring of 2014. It was an exceptionally wet spring, and he noticed huge washouts and gullies in others conventionally tilled fields. Meanwhile, even though his land had more slope, there was no soil movement or erosion. So if our client were to follow Mr. Weber's footprints, he would most likely see very similar results and end up profiting more within a couple of years. As we know, farmers depend on their animal and plant crop harvest. So we feel very strongly that this is the best, easiest, and cheapest plan for Mr. Shipman.
As far as funding goes, not every person has enough money lying around to build a buffer or change tilling practices at the drop of a hat. That's why there have been many efforts to reduce overall cost and financial stress upon farmers to make a change towards more environmentally friendly farming. There's a wide range of financial aid, from grants to sponsorships, available to people who are just willing to search. On the USDA homepage alone, there are several grants listed available to farmers willing to change their farming methods. One grant available is the Conservation Stewardship Program. Another program is the National Resources Conservation Service. Thank you.